and processes, particularly with respect to the environment, like climate change, production, and human-altered landscapes, and also historic, such as trade and collection factors. Outside of research, she has been involved in several initiatives to promote and communicate science to students, researchers, administrators, and the wider public. Welcome, Nandini, and over to you.
Welcome everyone to day 3 of the Citizen Science Conference. Over the past couple of days, we have talked about what citizen science is, the scope and opportunities that it can provide for science, policy, and conservation. One aspect that has consistently come through is the undeniable role of technology in citizen science today. We all know that technology has been a massive enabler of citizen science efforts in the past couple of decades, and we can see this reflected in most presentations even at this conference. Our 3 panelists today all have vast experience with technology and data, and many of you may know them as being associated with one or more platforms. Setting an agenda for today's panel, we will talk about what technology is essential, what good technology must do, and what lies ahead in the future. I'd like to introduce our panelists before we get started. We have Praveen J. Praveen is a bird watcher and engages with various citizen science initiatives on birds across India. He's associated with Bird Count India and the Kerala Bird Atlas and works in an editorial capacity with the journal Indian Birds. Praveen works in the software industry. Prabhakar Rajagopal has worked with the India Biodiversity Portal since its inception in 2009. He's long been an ambassador for open data. He's also on the executive committee of the Taxonomic Database Working Group, which creates global data standards for biodiversity, informatics, data storage, warehousing, and exchange. Our third panelist for today, Vijay Bharway, has been involved with engaging citizens on the subject of biodiversity data collection and collation for many years, since the days of Yahoo lists. He coordinates the Diversity India groups, which cover almost all biodiversity elements. He's passionate about encouraging people to move from social media towards citizen science platforms. However, he's platform agnostic and is a serial super user on many platforms. Welcome, Praveen, Prabhakar, and Vijay. As in yesterday's panel, the audience on Slack can post their questions on the Slack channel for the panel, and Pooja Pawar is the volunteer for the session, and she will help you out on Slack. So we'll get started with asking a general question. When we look at the evolution of technology for citizen science, what in your minds are the major technological landmarks? And if I could ask Praveen to kick off the discussion today.
Thanks, Nandini. Welcome all. Glad to be in touch with all of you virtually, though it would have been nice if it was physically. So on this topic, citizen science has existed in India for quite some time. But there are a few landmarks, as Nandini was pointing out, which are important. Some of them, I would say it started with near to the dawn of the millennium. So it's between 98, 99, and 2001. A few things happened which remarkably changed the scene. One I would call out is that accessibility to the emails has increased just after 98. And that actually promoted what we just mentioned, the Yahoo groups. And before the Yahoo groups got formed, the first natural history group was started in 1998 by Vivek Tiwari from sitting in the US called Nathist India. I don't know how many of you was aware of it, but that was probably the first group which got formed. Soon after, we had the first bird group in India, which was BNG Birds for Bangalore. And from there, the state-specific group started getting formed. And probably the first non-bird group specifically got formed, Butterfly India, which is just done by none other than Vijay. And that actually became Diversity India when it expanded to more. So that was one landmark, emails and email groups which started. The second one in 2000-2001 timeframe was when digital cameras became more popular. It became affordable. It became a commodity. And that actually transformed to India Nature Pixels, which some of you would know, remember it. It became India Nature Watch. Both were spearheaded by Vijay Kaval, whom we lost recently. And that two things happened very simultaneously, that citizen science took off from there in a semi-structured manner, not in a structured manner, semi-structured manner. And it continued for about 10 years, I would say. Come 2010, Facebook entered the scene. Social media changed the landscape. And what actually transformed was the scale of operation. Groups which had about hundreds and maybe little about thousands became groups of thousands and a lakh. Indian Birds group has got more than a lakh of members. And that also saw the first seeds of the online portals. It started with IBP, World Birds, which used to exist. And in 2014, eBird came into picture where the semi-structured, unorganized citizen science entered a database which is structured. And from there, more and more portals started getting formed. iNaturalist came into picture. Mobile apps became so powerful after 2015. Android became a commodity. Android applications became easy to make. That now that is where we are right now. Any citizen science portal doesn't exist without an associated app on your device, and that actually connects thousands of citizens back to the cloud where actual portals are hosted. So I would say these are the three main landmarks: the email and discussion groups, followed by social media, followed by the revolution Android has created. None of them were driven by life science scientists. They were all driven by technology.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Prabhakar, do you have something you'd like to add to this?
So let me take a the functionality angle. I'm from the generation of mainframes, but let me not ramble on that. It was very, very clear in Karen Cooper's talk about how the whole thing, citizen science, has taken off after the internet revolution. Now, let me take the usership and the functionality angle of these whole things. When the email system came out, you could kind of communicate. It was a push. You would get an email notification about something. India Tree Picks or Trees India was a very, very popular group. It's today the largest group, email group, and still persisting in India, in the world, in fact, on natural history. So these groups are there, but it's a one-way communication. It's an email that comes into your inbox, and you really don't know anything. Aggregation was not there. That was one phase of it, the email phase. And there were many, many activities in the email phase. There's no aggregation of data. You can't go and look at previous posts. You can see the mail thread, but you can't really aggregate the data and provide it in one way. Then the web interface way, the web portals, the web platforms came, where if you upload, if you contribute something, it in fact has a life of its own. It lives on forever. People can look at it, people can aggregate it, people can put things together, people can analyze it, people can comment it. It becomes perpetual. It has a life of its own. The third phase that we are seeing today is the mobile first phase. People have power in their fingers. And that's the third phase that we're seeing today. So from a usership point of view, from the functionality point of view, you had a system where it was just no aggregation, just a notification system. The second phase where you could aggregate all the data and put it all and show this data out. And the third phase where all development today is done on a mobile first interface. I think these are the two functional units of what Praveen talked about.
Right, right. And clearly something that comes out in everything that you said is the internet, which allows this kind of connectivity in the first place, whether it is on platform A or platform B. So to just step back a little, why is technology so important for citizen science today? Has technology really changed the game? And maybe all of you could answer. Maybe Vijay could kind of kick that off.
Yes. So, as we were discussing, internet has been one really important kind of force throughout, which starting from 95, 96, when it was only available in IITs and IISER, slowly percolated up to common citizen by 2000, and then we know now after that it has become so kind of expensive for everyone to have it. And as Praveen mentioned, digital photography initially starting with the kind of shoot easy smaller gadgets to now very high-end camera equipment which you can capture, and parallelly starting off with the mobile phone cameras, which like were always like they are always in your pocket. Anytime you can just pull out and take a picture. And then now even some of the mobile phone cameras have amazingly good resolutions, and
Absolutely.
you have, I have seen like 3 or 4 cameras being fitted in the same phone nowadays to take different kind of things. So yeah, these two things have definitely kind of changed the whole face, and internet obviously to reach to any person in any corner of the world, basically to start talking and getting information, accessing experts, and so on. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yes, technology has enabled a lot of people to participate, but has it changed the field of citizen science, how citizen science is done? We heard about how citizen science has been done in many different ways for 150 years, really, or even further, going further back. But has technology changed something? And, we live in a techno-positive world, as Pankaj Seksaria says. But has that made an impact?
Definitely, in terms of aggregation, you can do aggregation at scales that earlier was not possible. I mean, you need to like maintain records and maybe initially physically mail to someone if you are maintaining like the old time Christmas word counts or whatever that kind. And even I remember when I was in high school and college, the what we used to call winter waterfowl census.
Right.
Midwinter waterfall.
To get
Asian waterfall
the physical forms in post from Asian waterfall census, and then we used to like physically BNHS if I'm not wrong, and then we used to fill it in and mail, and that has enormously changed. With now anyone and everyone can just use the mobile phone to put in this kind of data and submit.
Okay. And Prabhakar, do you have an opinion about this?
Nandini, I don't know if you've seen this movie Social Dilemma that's come out as a oh, you should look at that movie. It's just come out. It's a documentary, and it really blows your mind on what the internet and social networks have done to our society. There's no question that it's made massive impact in the way citizen science is practiced. And let's understand this. There are many things that one can talk about, but it's actually manipulating human behavior. Let me give you just give you just 2 examples of what is happening here, right? One is you would have seen INAT. In fact, Priya Singh, one of the presenters in the previous session, you were moderator. You were on that session. I mean, she was somewhere in the forest. She kind of, when I met her a couple of years back in Dehradun, she said what she does is she posts the data first, the observation first into INAT. And why? Because INAT gives you an automatic AI-based identification system.
Yeah.
You don't need people to identify what's happening, And then she says, second, she posts it into India Biodiversity portal. Now, this is the nature of behavior that's going on. What is happening about identifications? Merlin came in. Now, where are bird identifications? Where's the joy of looking at the bird and identifying the bird and watching it and hearing it and things like that? The first thing that you do is to take out your cell phone and camera. I may be an old gen, but the first thing that you do is take out your cell phone and a camera and take a shot. Let me highlight another point that's really come in, which is this whole notification system. IBP, when we were kind of building out the new interface, we're redesigning it, and when we discussed this, there was a big discussion whether we should do an automatic notification system. So now what we've done is, and it was a big debate. Now what we've done is if you subscribe, if your browser is open, ting, 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 that noise comes because a notification, somebody has posted something and you get a notification on it. Is it distracting? Is it changing? You go and look, what is that bird that the guy has posted? So these things are really, I mean, let's not be, let's understand that human behavior is changing, and
okay,
and
there's no going back.
There's no going back, and so we'll have to kind of be a little more conscious.
Yeah, Praveen, do you have anything to say about the Twitchers and the tweeters and the Merlin platform?
Just double down on what Vijay and Prabhakar said told, but adding a different flavor to it. There was also a Slack talk whether technology is channeling the citizen science to a particular cohort of people who are not able to do that. In my opinion, I am actually a great fan of technology, that technology bridges barriers. There are things which are being created in technology which we can't think of right now. Natural language processing, automatic translations. So these language barriers and things like that are actually going to diminish now. And what you are going to see is probably an explosion in the scale of operation, that people who were not earlier contributing would start doing it into the system. It may actually mean different things to us today. We would look upon them and say, this is not what citizens was now. But look at the change which is going to happen. The tens are going to become millions. And that is going to what get enabled with technology. So future is bright. It may not be as we want, but end game to citizen science and biodiversity, it's going to be good.
Okay. Thank you all for your positive. So yes, I mean, maybe this is the future. But let's look at what there is around us today. And in your opinions, what are the major citizen science platforms or portals out there? And what is the best thing about this portal? What should a good portal do? And how does this particular portal that you pick achieve this? Maybe Vijay again.
Yeah, so I think there are multiple portals are really comparative and compatible in some sense. Obviously, eBird is probably the one which is generating the largest data from India in terms of volumes, and then definitely we have the India Biodiversity Portal and Biodiversity Atlas of India. These two are again, they have their own strengths, and iNaturalist is very rapidly picking up in India of late. And yeah, looking at those, when I see as a user, and I've used all of them, I think user friendliness is one of the things that kind of drives a lot of users to this, but that alone is not good. There could be a interface which is really user friendly, but then unless and until you have sustained activity on the portal in terms of members, in terms of some kind of I don't know whether expert is the right term, but I would say advanced amateur users or advanced or even involvement of scientists in the portals to kind of help and discuss some of the identification and related issues is definitely this thing. And also the adaptability of the portal. If users are coming up with some ideas, some thoughts, can the portal really adapt itself in a reasonable time to cater to those needs, so that the user is still kind of sustained and staying with the portal. I think these are the important factors.
Okay, and Praveen, what according to you is a really good portal that's out there, and maybe one thing about it that you think is really valuable?
Yeah, sure. Just to add perspective, I haven't explored too many portals actively, but I have explored most of the ones as an amateur, I would say. But eBird is one portal which I've been using constantly, and something connected to what Vijay mentioned, and something unconnected as well. So I think eBird went with the philosophy that there is something in what birders are doing. So that was a tenet on basis of which eBird started. Once a tenet was identified, I at least personally feel that they built it user backwards. What are the features which a user would want? The moment the user features were correct, the cohort which we have targeted started adopting it. More users means more data means more analysis means more data outputs, more meaningful data outputs. More data output means more adoption by larger organizations. And that actually brings in more users. So this is a flywheel. The flywheel started rotating. If you get this fundamental thing right, I think INAT also got this right. INAT also had a different cohort of users. There's a field biologist who are interested in taking photographs right there in the field and uploading. They also got that cohort right. The moment you get the cohort right, the flywheel starts rotating. Then from there, you can't stop it. So I think, at least personally, every system will have, you can't make everyone happy every time, but there will be a cohort which you can make happy, and you fundamentally believe that they are able to provide useful data. Target it, make the user happy, things will start flying. That's my thought.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. And Prabhakar, what's your favorite?
What can I say? I'm kind of immersed in the India Biodiversity Portal right from the time it started. But let me handle this question at two different levels. Yeah. At one level, let us see, what the others have said as well. A list of things, a list of facilities that the portal needs to provide. The first thing is ease of use. It must be user-friendly, user interfaces must be nice and attractive and things like that. That is definitely the top thing. If you really want participation, if you want people to kind of come in, you must acknowledge their contribution. You must, when somebody puts it on, acknowledge their contribution, give it a signature block, say this person has uploaded it, etc., etc. So that kind of gratification system comes in. Now, this is also slightly dangerous. You could also do this as a competitive kind of list. This person posted so much, that person posted so much, and start competing and start putting in, and then you may start junk coming in. So you have to be careful about this whole gratification system. You need a community is very, very important. A social community. You posted, I posted, we all posted into a certain thing. So there's a certain wave involved in it. Finally, I think two other things. One of the important things to keep the portal clean is the ability to flag, wrong content. You must be able to flag and say, hey, this content is not good, this content is faulty, this content needs to be removed, this is junk, people are abusing it, that kind of flagging. And we found that flagging, the world seems to be a good place. The flagging is really not too much done. We get maybe 10 flags, maybe 4 or 5 flags a month. That's all that we get. The ability to customize what Vijay kind of mentioned, the ability to customize, for example, if one of you are running a citizen science campaign, I want specific fields for the citizen science campaign. I'm doing something on weeds, and I want to know the spread of weeds, the quantity of weeds, the abundance of weeds in an area. So the ability to configure all this is very important. So these are the kind of features that one talks about. Let me talk a little about the different categories of portals that are out there. Now, a portal like the India Biodiversity Portal is an integrated biodiversity portal. What I mean by integrated biodiversity portal is you have the observation interface for citizen science, you have species pages for experts, you have maps that you can kind of explore where rainfall is there, like temperature is there, where various other features are also there. You have documents where gray literature can be put in and all put together. And these things are integrated together. So there's this integrated biodiversity informatics systems. There are very few of them. Biodiversity, the Biodiversity Atlas of India is such an integrated system. It has, for example, the systematics, something about the description of the species, etc., etc. Atlas of Living Australia is another very, very, very integrated system. So it has everything put together. Then you have specialized systems like the iNaturalist, Encyclopedia of Life. I mean, it's not gone anywhere. It's been static because of loss of funding. But iNaturalist, which is now, which specifically targets citizen science. If you look at India Biodiversity Portal, the maximum kind of, the citations, the maximum, if you look at Google Analytics, actually, I'm surprised. The maximum use of the India Biodiversity Portal is actually the species pages. The description of species.
I see. That's interesting.
Yeah. And so if you look at the hits and the use of this thing, it looks like species pages is what people are really looking at. My colleague Thomas would kind of substantiate these things because he kind of manages the whole thing. But, so there are these different kinds of portals that one has to talk about and think about and be alive about,
Right. So all three of you seem to suggest that the user is really, really important. and platforms must be built for the user or with the user in mind, right, for a platform to be successful. But what are the other features that make a platform a good platform? Like, do we have to think about design? Do we think about how we build this community of users in the first place, like recruitment? Or is it simply features for users to enable the users that are there?
You're asking me, Nandini?
Well, maybe we can start with you and then move to Vijay.
Nandini, so, personally, our approach has been that, and I don't think it's worked very well. Huh? Our approach has been that we will build an enabling platform and keep quiet about it, and people will take it up. I think we need, on the other side, I think we need users to start, leveraging the platform, incentivize users to leverage the platform. We can't just be a technology builder and enabling platform and people will take off. Although I have a few instances of being just an enabling platform. For example, there is a biodiversity management council which is supposed to create these PBRs. Now, one particular community, village community in Manipur, has just taken up and started using the biodiversity. We don't know them from before or after,
Okay.
So they've started.
You're of the view that if you build it, they will come.
If you build it, they would come. I don't know if this will work. We are just learning and trying to kind of see what works and what doesn't work.
Okay. Okay. So we have, Vijay, maybe we can hear from you. Do you think that,
Yeah, I think it's combination of features and recruitment strategies and this thing. And like Praveen mentioned, if you have some of these basic elements right, and if it picks up, it just kind of keeps growing organically and kind of spiraling upwards in terms of usage. So I think that it depends on what strength might just click with the users and pick up. So it's a little bit like startup. So I think for Biodiversity Atlas, the expert curated data has been their strength, and that has picked up everyone who really wants like some kind of authentication to their ID or something is the one who they're really keen to post there. Of course, they also have a huge user base because of it has come from the users itself. It has started, but definitely I see that as a strength there.
Right. So a lot of our participants on Slack are commenting on the things that you're saying. And some of this is with respect to how we started off with the importance of technology, and we'll come back to that towards the end. But some of the questions that we are getting now is that there are citizen science projects that ask questions for which there isn't a pre-existing audience, and that's from Suhail, for example, Season Watch in the US. So Prabhakar, do you think that this is kind of like what you said, that you build a platform and someone will come and find it and use it?
No, come again. I just, Suhail's question. Come again.
Suhail says, you spoke about building a platform that firstly meets the requirements of people or users, but there are some citizen science projects that ask questions for which there isn't a pre-existing audience.
Good point.
So these questions, yeah. So,
I got it. Good point. Suhail and I have been having this discussion from very early times. If he remembers, I too remember this. What is the question that you're asking? And do you need to build a platform for a question, or do you build a platform that can be, the other way around, so to say? Are you doing a fishing expedition? Are you doing a hypothesis testing? Now, by nature, I just seem to like fishing expeditions, but let me put my nature behind and let me look at this question. Now, if you want to really target and ask a question and collect information and data like the Seasons Watch has been doing, there are specific questions that they talk about. Migrant Watch was the first thing that Suhail kind of launched and did, where he was asking specific questions on climate change, on movement, on migration, and things like that. Now, while that has value, I would think that this free-form aggregation and availability of data the levels and the questions that you can ask will be very, very different. You can talk about, large scale ecology questions. You can talk about distribution questions in a larger scale, at the scale of structure of communities and things like that. And these are new questions that come about because there is a data that's driving these questions. I don't know if I made myself clear, but
okay, all right. We'll move on to the next, and maybe some of these questions can be answered on Slack too. And Praveen, it'd be nice if you could give us your inputs with that question also. But we're talking about user-friendly platforms, right? And that's all great. But without any kind of curation from the side of the platform, how much is this data worth? And can this even be addressed? So like you're saying, we have this explosion of data, explosion of people participating. But if there is no one on the other side telling you what you're seeing, is AI today good enough to accurately identify what people are putting up? How do we address something like this? And how important is it? Maybe Praveen?
Yeah, sure. Definitely more data would mean more noise. The percentage may vary, but there will be more noise. So there are two systems right now which addresses it slightly differently. One is a system which is completely community participated, where you have an evidence which is available to evaluate, and you evaluate that evidence, which is almost certainly a photograph or a video or an audio, and based on that, you assign an ID. This is the model which is followed in INAT. This is what is followed in Sinocanto, for example, where there is a hard evidence which is available here. There are also platforms where the evidence itself is hazy, where you actually have a field note. Sometimes you may not even have anything to go by except a number to go by. So how that has to be addressed is slightly different. That data is also valuable. It's not that only data which hard evidence is valuable. It is not potentially possible to collect evidence for each and every biodiversity information. So there, how you would handle it slightly probably different. We have to use the knowledge which was built in before the citizen science days, like people or experts who are there in the system, who could actually create mechanisms like filters through which you can take this large database of information, pass it through a sieve, come out with two sets of data, which is ones which are definitely incorrect identification, and one set of data which is potentially correct, but we don't have enough evidence. And of course, the third set which seems to pass through the filter. Once you have these databases which are filtered out, so there is a machine, there is a human involved, then there's a machine, and then there is another human involved who would try to validate only this smaller set of data by communicating with the observers, trying to gather more evidence, trying to gather at least some kind of a notes which would substantiate this particular observation 50 years from now. So this is a second system which is there in place. Both system has got its good and bad. Both system has got its scale of operation which it can handle. But since we have both kind of data collection, we would need both systems in place. So eBird has got actually kind of both in place. The media can be reported, but then the human comes into picture where human has to actually check whether the media has been reported correctly and then communicate with the observer. At some point of time, that reporting is going to become AI based. So we cannot replace humans with AI. AI is something which will attack the scale so that you have a manageable problem to solve for the human being. So I think that kind of a space where technology enables tackling certain kind of things, but later human making sure that technology is doing right and ensuring that the public engagement happens is important. At least that's at least my view in which I see how the data is scaling and data curation is also keeping up.
Okay. And when we move away from birds, say to something like insects or smaller taxa, and maybe I can ask Vijay to comment here, something like iNaturalist really helps out with AI. But Vijay, you yourself are part of several WhatsApp groups that help people to identify what they see based on images from their phones before they post to iNaturalist, right? So, I mean, this is mind-boggling that we have consensus in a WhatsApp group and then we move it to iNaturalist and then there's a fresh round of consensus with curators. I mean, so this whole curation thing, without curation, should one bother to, submit data?
Right. So definitely, I mean, there is no doubt curation is one of the most important things, and recruiting good curators for any of these platforms is going to be key. Every platform has their own strategy to do it. Sometimes it's like assigning a responsibility. Okay, you are curator for this region and for this group of taxa, or times it's left open and anyone can just come and start with curatorial jobs. Again, both have their advantages and disadvantages in terms of time availability, in terms of people actually looking at it, and it's also very important uh, uh, for what are they offering to the curators. It's like why are curators going to stick around and spend that time? Like, not if I'm wrong, Praveen, but eBird gives kind of responsibility. Okay, he's the curator for this region or this group of birds, and that's kind of in some sense, some prestige or some
incentives from yesterday's panel.
acknowledgement of your what's there that is a value addition for the curator. Why should they spend time? And again, uh, I'll talk a little bit about INHL's experience. It's more or less has been like people interested in certain groups. I mean, example is Nandini interested in squirrels. She will make sure she herself or her team looks at all the squirrel records and kind of curate, because she can also use it for her own work. And then similarly, there are people who are interested in butterflies of India, and some
Absolutely.
interested in moths. But then what happens is working.
Yeah.
At times, there are people who are interested in a particular genus worldwide, so they are the ones who are running and curating. But why would they curate? Is they get it back. They get the data of the whole world back for their research paper or to understand things. So I think that is very important. And as Praveen mentioned, data science based tools are definitely making a lot of progress, and they are going to be kind of excellent filters for pointing out these kind of anomalies in data, whether it's a size record,
Okay.
a chance record, or it's something which is on the kind of margin. Someone really needs to
Right.
look at it and confirm, like that. So I
Yeah.
think combination of this is going to really help in curation.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of move to a slightly different angle. We have about 20 minutes left and lots of questions coming in. So we will try to address more questions from the audience. But very quickly, before we get there, can we talk about citizen science and social media? Social media is an indispensable part of our lives, and the current pandemic has only illustrated this, to a much greater extent than before. There is no going back from social media. Is the technology for citizen science movement attempting to mirror the social media movement? And should we integrate citizen science with social media in a much bigger way, make it easier for people rather than, more challenging in some ways? Maybe Vijay, since he
Shall
has a
I go
strong
ahead?
take.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. So as you pointed out, definitely portals are in some sense kind of borrowing or copying some features of uh, social media like Facebook and Twitter, which are more commonly in use with general public, and I don't see anything wrong in it that needs to be there. My personal take on this is there is no need to kind of leave social media and just concentrate on these portals. You have to find that sweet spot. You have to find that balance. And you just mentioned about some of the WhatsApp groups, basically, or Facebook groups doing that. So to my mind, if I'm a biodiversity person, what I do is when I see something, I first go and post it on portal. I just leave it at a very broad scale. So I say this is a moth, this is a butterfly, or whatever it is. If I'm not sure what exactly it is, I mean, for butterflies I can do, but for moths, in most cases I just leave it to moths, and then I come back to Indian Moths group either on Facebook or WhatsApp, I just share that link here and say, okay, look, this is what I've seen. What I think is this. What do people feel? And then a few of the social media people who are also active on INHLS will immediately go to INHLS, and before even I realize, I have IDs and confirmations and other things happening there. So I think this finding this balance is very important. I don't want to say that don't just leave social media aside and just look at portals, or even the other way around, because the problem with social media is you just shelf life is really small. Within hours you don't see that message again because there are active groups, and it just kind of vanishes. And that doesn't happen with, I mean, I'm regularly surprised that some of my INHLS records, I get ID confirmations from genus to species after 5 years, 6 years. Suddenly someone who's on that group comes back to this and sorts of this thing, or someone quotes a paper saying, look, this is a new paper and looks like this species from India, which earlier was not known, or things like that. That happens. That is never possible with other social media.
Okay.
Finding that balance.
Okay, and Prabhakar, do you have something you'd like to add to this?
So let me make just 2 quick points on data curation, if you don't mind, on the previous.
Sure.
Very briefly and quickly. So data curation is a mixed bag. In our own environment, people like Krishnameg very carefully curate the data and use it for research. In yesterday's talk, there was this concern, or there was this nice explanation by Naveen Nambudri, who talked about, you looked at it from the research side, you look at it from the citizen side. From the research side, you wanted different protocols, curated data, and things like that. Whereas from the citizen side, you really are much more funky. You want all kinds of things coming in, doesn't matter, etc. Now, there is the Wikipedia model that seems to have kind of worked, reasonably many eyes looking at it, it gets curated and put out. But one thing that I want to kind of mention is that the whole idea of duplication of data. If you go to GBIF, data really has started to move from various places to various means and is there in GBIF. So it's really the eye of the beholder. The person who uses the data must be circumspect. And I think the onus is on the user of the data. On social media, so that was on the curation. On the social media itself, Nandini, maybe you should talk a little about what you did with, with the squirrels.
Okay.
I think that would be good.
Well, we have a poster about this, so I'm not going to talk too long. But basically, we looked for squirrels. Most people don't care to post squirrel photos because they're everywhere. But at least on citizen science portals, not as exciting as a cool moth or something. But on social media, we found like 3 times more records or 4 times more records of squirrels than we did on citizen science platforms. Curation was a completely different issue, quite a nightmare actually, even on citizen science platforms, which, we found that we lost 20% of the data from social media and citizen science due to curation problems and not enough data. But yes, I think that social media cannot be dismissed. If you are a scientist, an end user looking for data, citizen science platform is not sufficient for certain taxa. For birds, it might not be the case at all. You probably don't have to go further than eBird maybe if you want to look for distribution data. But yeah, I mean, from the end user point of view, I do think that it would be great to have some integrations in place, right? And also, as someone who's recently started posting on some platforms like iNaturalist, it would be nice with a click of a button if I could post across 2 things or 3 things, right? I mean, I hate using my phone most of the time, but I'm sure there are others like me who like biodiversity but don't like the tech so much. So yes, I think that the more integration we have, maybe the easier it makes it for the end user, as on both sides. The person who's posting and the person who's actually getting something out of whatever you're putting up there. And maybe this also goes towards some of the points that are being raised in the Slack channel. People are talking about whether this use of technology and the kind of gadgets we use, do they kind of alienate some parts of society? And we don't want to step into the foray of other panel discussions at the conference. But Praveen, what do you think? What do you think the role of technology is
Yeah, so I think I already touched upon it. I feel that technology is going to be an enabler. I think every time when we are actually at the juncture, we feel that technology is going to marginalize the society into different segments. I feel it's always the reverse. We are going to have technology solve these problems so that it reaches more masses. There would definitely, I think the community-based bias would go away with the kind of development which is happening in technology. There can potentially be an age-based segregation in the sense that it's not just related to citizen science, but to anything. There could be a case that a particular age group will find difficult adoption. But who are our citizen scientists 5 years from now? They're the zillennials. They are the ones who have accepted technology everywhere. And that's what going to get into across all kind of barriers, like any kind of social segment, any kind of education level, any kind of language. It is going to transcend all of them. So the mass movement is going to happen. I think it's true that age-based segregation may happen because of technology.
Okay, all right. There are other questions on Slack that we can take up in a minute. But on that note, where do you think, we're talking about the future generation, so where do you think that citizen science and technology are headed? Where is the future of tech for CITSI headed? Maybe Praveen again.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know how many. It's scary to think. Like I get up in the morning. I wear some kind of a contact lens. I wear some plug on the ear, some sticker out here. I walk into the field. So there is an AI companion whom I am talking to. The AI is seeing exactly what I'm seeing. It's throwing up species ID if you're asking. So he's talking to me. Do you see the flock of ducks here? You see the SMEW out there? Oh, yeah, that's a SMEW, but you're not the first person to see it. People saw it earlier in the day. I knew it was there. So look at it carefully. That's a female. Okay. And then you're talking to it, and then it's hearing exactly what you're also hearing. And finally, at the end of the day, it's asking, should I submit this to INAC or that we want? No, submit it to both. So this is the kind of thing which is going to happen 5 or maybe 7 years from now. It may be around the corner. There is already an optic binoculars which can actually identify photographs of birds while you're watching. And I think that's going to be a commodity. Today, all of us will shun, but the amount of people who are going to enter the scene because of these advances would be enormous, which we can't think of right now. And that's going to increase the scale at which all the current portals are going to work. And it's going to be good for biodiversity.
Wow, this is a very Hollywood perspective on tech for CITSI. But who knows, right? We might get there. What do the other two think, Prabhakar and Vijay?
So can I go?
Yeah.
So there are a few things. Let me just talk a little more in the short term. Data aggregation is definitely going to kind of scale up. There will be data. There is much, much more data coming in. That's a given. I think data will be given. Data will blow up from different biomes, different areas. If you look at GBIF today, the Asia area is very poorly represented. Now, GBIF is going to come and set up an office in Asia to propagate data aggregation from Asia. So data coming in is going to kind of scale up exponentially, over exponentially, and accelerate. Now, there are other things, Donald Hoban, who was actually who headed GBIF for a long time and brought it to this level, has now moved to International Barcode of Life, IBOL. And what he's talking about, in fact, he kind of mentioned this almost like a Hollywood or a sci-fi kind of thing, saying there would soon be, metagenome sensors in various places, in various environments put up that will actually identify, capture samples of the environment, break it up into species, and give you the species richness of every place. And all this data will come out and will be available for people to use. And that's what he's working on. And I would like to see and it's a concrete project. IBOL, it's called. It's a concrete project. And I'm sure this guy will achieve something and bring something out. Now, the question that one must kind of look out, the scary and the question that one must kind of look out is essentially two things. Will open data be still open data?
Yeah.
Will data will be completely open and freely accessible to everybody? And then the second thing is that one may see a corporatization of these platforms, because data is corporate, data is money, data is the oil. So what are we doing about corporate? Will these platforms get corporatized? Will they open and keep its identity, and things like that? The third thing that I want to say about the future is, are we looking at one large global player, or are we looking at 100 flowers bloom in some way, which will be different? In India we have many different portals, and each of them have their own kind of mixes and nuances and things like that. Now, are we going to see one big guy coming in and taking over? My friend and colleague Som seems to say that, hey, that's really what will happen in this internet and data space. There'll be one guy who will dominate the area, the others will go into oblivion. Are we going to see that? And these are questions, and I think finally the users, actually citizens, must get much more nuanced, alert, and not just be pawns in this whole game. They should understand, they should like to reflect on what they are doing, where are they, very nuanced approach on where is the data going, is it going to be used, is it going to be for the development and conservation of society, and things like that. I'll stop here, Nandini.
Okay. And Vijay, where do you think we are going with that?
I think Praveen and Prabhakar has covered everything. We can go to the questions, because we are also
all right. Sure, we have quite a few comments here, and I'm just going to pick a few and get opinions. A lot of people agree or disagree with some points of view that have been laid out. Rajit says to Praveen, eBird is a Cornell lab project, while iNaturalist is jointly developed by California Academy of Sciences and NGT. Are the IITs and other institutes in India involved in developing similar citizen science platforms?
Good question.
The question is to Praveen, but any of you can answer.
Praveen, you want to go first? Praveen? Okay.
I think we just lost him, but yeah.
It's a good question. Now, the question is, do we need indigenous biodiversity informatics systems in place? If we need it, the community must support. If we believe that we can kind of go and use and embrace one of these systems, we can go ahead and embrace one of these systems. The community must really decide. There are instances where local systems have done very well. In Sweden, there's an art portal system which is doing very well. In France, there are systems that are locally kind of embedded that seem to be doing very well. I forget what it's called. So there are these, so we need to decide. I think we have the power. I think we have the capability. I think we need support and resources. But my personal opinion on this is that in India, biodiversity is a different game. It's just not data on distribution of species. It is livelihoods. It is, landscapes. It is use of it for conservation. It is conflicting use of resources and things like that. We need to have a different course of action in biodiversity. These other systems carry immense distribution data. But are you going to integrate all of that and go on a different path? People in IITs, local communities, this particular forum that we have now constituted must take a decision on this. I don't know if it was a long answer.
And we need Indian systems or locally developed systems. I think Praveen's not able to hear us.
Praveen, can you hear?
Sorry, Nandini, I just missed the question. What was it?
No, there was a question to you about whether we need Indian systems like set up within the country so that they address the needs of India. And Prabhakar was explaining the answer to that. The question was to you.
It depends on the taxa to an extent. If you're actually looking at a taxa which is more resident, not moving a lot, there is not too much of migratory patterns, having a system which is set up locally would also work. look at a taxa which is actually moving globally across landscapes. Having a single integrated system which has got the same kind of data curation mechanisms and same kind of data characteristics would actually help in defining and understanding the threats that particular taxa is taking. I think that's where the logic is with respect to global portals versus India portals. It is specifically, I would say, taxa dependent. And certain taxa, it is much far more wiser to look at global systems like birds, where you can't study migration of birds from Himalayas to southern India without including Nepal, Bhutan. And that's where most of the need. So that's where we need a single integrated system to do it. And similarly, same for all kind of Arctic migrants, which are facing enormous amount of threats. We need data from Southeast Asia, South Asia, and the Arctics together to actually understand what the threats are there. So there, investing in a single system would help scientists at large to come out with outputs easily matchable, comparable, and have confidence on the outputs of this versus having large disparate systems which may not talk to each other in the same way and creating some amount of cacophony. That's my view here.
Maybe we can take two more quick questions. So MD Madhusudan asks, when one is building a portal, what is the trade-off that every portal or platform has to negotiate between investing on back-end tech and front-end user interfaces?
Yeah, so I mean, building a portal is a different ballgame altogether. The biggest challenge is essentially to keep up, to keep up with the current, interfaces that are really going on. People will say, "Oh, Google has this facility, and it'll be nice to have that feature." So people get addicted to certain types of features and certain functionality, which is actually the movement of technology. And they will demand this movement of technology on you. You cannot have an old age system. You have to have the latest technology. So what I see, the current trend seems to be that the backend is kind of, has a longer time constant, so to say. It changes more slowly. The front end, and the front end is actually galloping at a very increased pace, using all these bells and whistles and the backends that are available. So this React, or if I want to go into the technology, this React framework is doing very, very well. It's nice, attractive, and things like that. I don't know if I answered completely your question, Madhu, but
yeah, maybe we could take it up on Slack some more. So there are two themes that seem to emerge from most questions. One is using multiple platforms actually dispersing data? So should we centralize where we post data? Maybe Vijay, you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, so my view on this is, because I use multiple platforms, obviously, is as long as they have ability to talk to each other, I don't see a problem, because data science is helping us to put all of these things end of the day, and people, users do like choices. I do like certain things about certain portal, for sure. Maybe it's access to the internal expertise. It could be access to the local expertise in some sense, or certain features, certain ease of use. So, and in some sense, organizations are like Tadwig are working towards setting the standards so that data can. I mean, that's my take on this.
Okay. Thank you.
So it may be. I'd like to see a nice federated kind of system. Little things talking to each other, and bringing up the whole. Now, definitely, centralizing the data in one place doesn't seem a great idea, but a federated system, an evolution of a federated system, may be a good thing to kind of look and explore. I don't know.
Okay. We're out of time, but one last question that kind of goes over some of the things that people are asking. So can technology actually give us this ideal world that we would all like to head towards? Can it, enable when devices are limiting? Can it help to overcome barriers of language? Can it actually bridge some of these gaps? And of course, other panels will be exploring these ideas too. But very quickly, what do you think?
I'm really positive about it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
I'm a tech evangelist, so I believe, I don't know whether what's the ideal world. I know it's for the good, but today what we think is ideal world may not be the ideal world tomorrow.
Okay, and Prabhakar?
I would request people to look at this new documentary that's come out.
Here we go.
Here we go.
All right, and with that, I think we should end. Thank you all for taking 1 hour, and thank you to all the people on Slack for asking questions. Please continue to ask questions, and your panelists will try to answer them through the day and through the week. Yeah? So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.